Monsters and midgets.
To possess, to destroy.
Hey, Artie!
You're not walking home alone tonight, are you? After what happened?
We'll be all right.
When are you going to realize that the whole world is just made of psychopaths?
He can't do anything right. He's a waste, Mom. A burnout. Shut your bitchy mouth!
Well, if the name of the podcast probably didn't give it away, maybe that clip would. We're covering the 1982 quasi supernatural slasher Superstition this episode. And as ever, this is Hysteria Continues, episode number 9, I believe. I'm Justin, webmaster of Hysteria Lives, and also the author of Teenage Wasteland. And as ever, I'm joined by our slasher troubadours. First up is Erik.
How do you know I am alive?
Thank you, Dana. And from Tennessee, Joseph.
We're no strangers to love. You know the rules, and so do I. There, I just rickrolled our entire audience.
Well, thank you, Joseph. And also from Tennessee, we've got Nathan.
I directed Hairdresser Massacre and Voodoo Massacre back in the 90s.
Yes, we should get around to talking about some of those movies you directed, Nathan.
This is true.
Yes, we
That show will last about 10 seconds long.
But if you should get some sound clips on, because that'll be really good fun actually to hear some. Are they as Joseph, you've seen them, haven't you?
Yes, I have seen them, and they're really spectacular.
Are they? Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
No sarcasm at all in that.
I thought that was my refrigerator. Or freezer. Right. It's been years since I've seen them, so I forgive
Okay.
you.
Well, I look forward to seeing them at some point. Are they on the internet anywhere?
No, my family
there's
threatened to kill me if I put them up.
Okay, and it's all friends and family acting in them, is it?
Yes.
Excellent.
No special edition DVD, I'm sorry to say.
Okay,
I
not
could
yet.
give a commentary.
Well, I think we're going to have to come back to these. I think if you can get some sound clips for the next show, Nathan, I think we should do a few. We should revisit those and whet people's appetite if you're up for that.
I'll work on that.
I'm sure the legions of our listeners would be. So, well, again, welcome back to the Hysteria Continues. We've got another bumper show for you. As I said before, we're going to be covering Superstition, which is what we've been doing is taking it in turns, choosing a slasher movie each. And this week it's my turn, and I'll talk about Superstition and why it was one of the staples of my childhood or my adolescence, and why I think it's a great film. And if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. We're also going to be talking about films we've recently seen and some feedback. We've actually got quite a lot of feedback this episode, so thank you if you've written in. Hopefully we'll give you a mention. And this episode we're going to do top 3 scores or songs from slasher movies. Now, this was something suggested, and I can't remember who suggested it now, but if it was you who suggested it, we are listening, and we got some corkers coming up. And also there's a special question which Joe's going to ask later. But first up, shall we say what have we been watching recently, folks? Do you want to go first, Erik?
Yeah, well, I've purchased a number of the releases from Arrow Films, who are this company in the UK doing some spectacular special editions of 80s movies, and 70s. I've got the Island of Death DVD, Phenomena Blu-ray and Vamp Blu-ray, and they are, none of them really slasher movies, although Phenomena I did include in my sort of slasher top 3 a few weeks ago. I just don't know what to say about them. I mean, when I started purchasing Region 2 discs, which is discs over here in Europe, back in the late 90s, they were always so much inferior to the Region 1 stuff that was coming out. So I used to import most of the DVDs I bought. But they've really caught up. I mean, Arrow are probably the best company, I think, out there at the moment, doing stuff. They're as good as Blue Underground, if not better, or Anchor Bay, or any of those, iconic labels that were there during the 2000s. And Justin, I believe that you have got some tasty Blu-ray news for us coming up in July.
I have indeed. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people might already know this, but I was sworn to secrecy. But I was invited by Callum Waddle, who's a fantastic genre journalist, and he does lots of the extras for Arrow releases with High Rising Productions, which is a fantastic little company who does some brilliant productions and extras for movies. And the thing, him and his girlfriend are fans of the movie, so they go out of their way to travel around the world to talk to obscure people about obscure movies and movies that we hold dear to our heart. But many people, many companies outside of Arrow would not go to the trouble they do. And they are putting out an amazing Blu-ray of Toby Hooper's The Funhouse, which has got something like 3 commentary tracks. It's just got a huge amount on there. And I was privileged enough to be invited to do a commentary track on The Funhouse. And also another film, perhaps even more highly sought after, is Slaughter High, which is the great Caroline Munro late 80s slasher, the very cheesy one. And again, I did a commentary with Mark Ezra, who was the film's writer to director. And we had a very fun time talking about it, and also basically talked about the background of the film and what happened to Simon Scudamore, who is the film's killer, Marty. As many people may know, he died from suicide, either accidental or on purpose, fairly shortly after the film closed. So I talked to Mark about him and about making the film. And I also interview Josephine, the woman who dies in the acid bath. I've interviewed her, and my interview is going to be on the liner notes. So yeah, that's going to be a fun edition. And both of those are out in July. So not just because I'm involved with them, because I don't get any money from it. I just do it like Callum and his girlfriend Naomi. I do it for the love, obviously, which is why we're doing the podcast today. So yeah, but keep an eye out for those, and there's more to come, which I can't go into at the moment, but keep them peeled.
Excellent. I just want to say, like on the Island of Death DVD, they have this fantastic extra Callum Models put together of there's an iconic kind of folk song from the film that's done in different versions by all these different types of Scottish band. There's kind of a psychobilly version, an indie version, a techno version. I mean, when I looked at the DVD extras, that was the least interesting, I thought, extra on the disc, and I left it to last, but it's actually just so much fun. I mean, there's so much care put into the discs. I mean, I urge everyone to support this label because, they're one of the few left who are putting out products like this.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And they've got plenty more to come. And as I say, I can't go into any details about it until I get the green light, but yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say Hairdresser Massacre.
As opposed to Code Red, who is not putting out anything. Yeah, Code Red's putting that out, which means it'll never come out.
What, Hairdresser Massacre or Voodoo Massacre? Double bill?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, there could be a bidding war going on between Arrow and Code Red. Who knows?
$1. It's the rarest movies ever made. So.
Exactly. So is that everything, Eric? You want to?
Well, I've seen a few other things as well, but I think you've seen them as well. So I'll wait for them to be brought up.
Okay. Yeah. How about you, Nathan? What have you been watching recently?
Well, I haven't watched that many slasher movies recently, surprisingly enough. I did watch the Mother's Day remake, and I thought it was excellent.
Because I've heard good things about that. Is it very different, without giving too much away? Is it very different from the original?
It's 100% different. That's why some people will say, well, do you like the original or the remake better? But I can't answer that because I love both of them. And to me, they're two completely different films. It's like apples and oranges. You can't really compare the two of them. But yeah, the remake is excellent. It's got a great performance. I think Rebecca De Mornay's awesome. Rebecca De Mornay. I thought she was awesome in that movie.
Here it is. How about you get your toilet book off the counter, and I don't leap across and punch you in the brain?
Is that what one of her a quote from Rebecca De Mornay?
It's a Seinfeld.
He's quoting Seinfeld.
Oh right, okay. Oh, sorry. Far too American for me, I'm sure, for Eric as well. We've been watching Eurovision and stuff like that, so we're keeping the Euro end up, as it were.
Yeah. I saw that one as well, actually. It is very different. It's a home invasion movie, much along the lines of The House on the Edge of the Park or The Strangers or Funny Games. I probably wasn't as enthusiastic as Nathan about it. I do think it's very good, and Rebecca De Mornay, or however you pronounce her name, is terrific in it. Really, really good. I found it slightly run of the mill, though, I have to say.
Okay. When's that due for release? Or is it out?
I'm not
I presume
sure.
it's out.
I'm not sure either. It was supposed to come out to the cinemas here, but I don't really know.
Yeah, it said on the internet April 2011 for a cinema release, but I don't know.
Okay, all right. Well, we shall see. I mean,
But it's certainly as good as The Last House on the Left remake, which got a big cinema release.
Okay, excellent. Anything else, Nathan, you've seen?
Well, that's all I've seen. Although, since Erik brought up Funny Games, I watched it, it's been a little while back, but I just want to tell everybody out there, I hate that movie. I despise it. I would burn every copy if I could. That's how much I hate it.
The original, the remake?
Both of them, I think they're both pretentious films, making us viewers supposed to feel guilty about watching violent films, and I'll watch violent films if I feel like it. If you don't like it, then tough shit.
Yeah, fair enough.
He's got some spunk today.
He's feisty. He's like
Feisty,
Madonna.
yes.
Hey, Kitty
Go
can
girl.
scratch.
Go girl.
Kitty can scratch.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Nathan. We shall have a little breathe in and calm down. And how about you, Joseph? What have you been watching?
Well, I've seen a few non-slasher films since we last recorded. Insidious, which I thought was fantastic. Very creepy, effective boo machine from the guys behind Saw. And it's probably the front runner for my favorite film of the year so far.
Okay.
I also watched the Norwegian, I believe it is, faux documentary Troll Hunter.
Okay,
Which is essentially Cloverfield without all the shaky camera work and with gigantic trolls instead of a typical monster. And it was quite exhilarating as well. But on the slasher side, I've seen what amounts to mostly excellent features, save for one, which I'll get out of the way right now. It's called Knock Knock. And it's another direct-to-video abomination that I wholeheartedly suggest you avoid at all costs. It's basically like watching the jerks from Jersey Shore getting killed off one by one. And if that sounds interesting, believe me when I say it isn't. For the good slasher films, or slasher-esque maybe, I watched the Vertige Highlander movie.
Oh,
that
yeah.
You spoke about.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I thought it was fairly interesting, and it has some really excellent rock climbing footage. And I think the whole, first 45 minutes is really harrowing when they get up on that suspension bridge and it kind of starts collapsing. But I think the film kind of meanders a little bit towards the finale. But there's enough there for a recommendation, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I felt about it.
There's three films that I really recommend, and the first is Night Warning, which I'm ashamed to admit that I've missed out on all these years.
Right, okay.
The one with Susan Tyrrell.
Yeah.
And she gives like a gonzo performance, just goes completely over the top, insane, and it was I really enjoyed that.
Sorry, is that the one that we call Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker?
That's it.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
the same.
That's a much better title. I like that title better.
It was a video nasty in this country. Yeah.
The other film I saw is kind of a cross between Three's Company and Deliverance, and it's called Tucker and Dale versus Evil. And the brilliant thing about this movie is you essentially have two sets of characters. You have two rednecks who are kind of actually rather likable, and then you have a group of these partying teens, and several misunderstandings arise. And the rednecks think that the teens are suicidal thrill killers, and the teens think the rednecks are ass raping hillbillies. So it's essentially a slasher film without a slasher, and many people die because of all these Jack Tripper-esque misunderstandings. And it's an effective slasher comedy, and I really recommend it. Now, finally, the most surprising of the lot, as Nathan says, is the Mother's Day remake, which I thought was really fantastic and even better than the original. Rebecca De Mornay, she kind of turns in this, believe it or not, Oscar-worthy performance as the sociopathic mother character, and the film kind of builds suspense by exploiting all of the characters' faults and them turning on one another, and it leads to some really surprising twists along the way.
Excellent. Oh no, it sounds interesting. I have to check it out when it finally reaches these shores. But anything else, Joseph? Those are the ones you've seen recently, yeah.
Yeah, that's about it. I mean, I've seen a few like reruns of like Frasier or stuff like that, but we won't talk about that.
No, okay.
I just say I forgot to mention it, but because of your recommendation, Justin, I watched that as well. That Vertige High Lane, and my opinion's actually the same as Joseph's. I actually thought that the rock climbing scenes were actually a lot more suspenseful than when the killer shows up.
Yeah,
still a good movie though.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's good to see the French still making slasher movies, because when they do make good ones, they make very, very good ones. I was going to say, I mean, I've just coming back to Insidious, as we say, it's not a slash movie by any stretch at all. Although, interestingly, we're covering Superstition this week, which is, you could argue, is not a slash movie. But I have done some interviews with a few people, and one of the people I was going to say, actually, we're going to be talking to Steve Laporte, who did many of the special effects on Superstition, as well as being the head special effects person on Lost, Terminator 2 and 3. He's working on the new Pirates of the Caribbean movie, but he started with low budget horrors like Demented, Home Sweet Home, that slasher favourite, and Superstition. But of course, that is a semi-slasher in so much that Michael O'Sabjel, who was the writer-producer, said it was really essentially a cross between Friday the 13th and the Amityville Horror Suspiria. But just coming back to Insidious, you couldn't really argue that was a slash movie. But I thought it was a fantastic time in the cinema. It was brilliant fun. The first 2/3 of it I thought were amazing. Proper scary, fun, cinema. I just wish they'd been able to rein back that kind of like pop culture, showing too much towards the end. Too many cartoonish images. It just kind of spoiled it a little bit for me. But ultimately, I thought the film was very good. It's something I'm going to enjoy revisiting. As far as slasher movies go, there's a few that I've been watching. I've been on a bit of a giallo kick at the moment, and I won't go into great amount of detail, but if you're interested in my opinion on the films, you can read them on the Hysteria Lives website. Two I saw recently, completely miles apart. One was The Case of the Bloody Iris, which is the Edwidge Fenech and George Hilton sort of pairing, one of the many, and it's hugely enjoyable, hugely cheesy, the archetypical cheesy giallo. It's almost as cheesy as Umberto Lenzo's Eyeball, which is fantastic fun as well. The other one was The Perfume of the Lady in Black, which is a hallucinatory kind of dreamlike sort of esoteric slash giallo slasher, with Mimsy Farmer, who was in Cat and Nine Tails, a Dario Argento movie, and they're both
Four Flies on Grey Velvet.
Oh, was it? Sorry, yes, you're quite right. Yes, Four Flies on Grey Velvet. And they're both of them miles apart, but very much recommended. The others I'd like to recommend is the Blu-ray of the Synapse films just put out of the Dawn That Dripped Blood, which, if you had to take a straw poll of any slasher that was going to appear on Blu-ray, you wouldn't imagine the Dawn That Dripped Blood would be right up there. Shot, I think, on 16mm on a tiny budget over the period of a year or 2 years. But it looks fantastic within the limitations. And I listened to, it's got very interesting sort of commentary with the two directors talking about how the film came together and the challenges they had making a slash movie for basically no money back in 1981. I won't go into too much detail about that, just purely because we're likely at some point to cover that film. And lastly, I rewatched, for some reason I had a strange yearning to watch Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. And funny enough, it always has been, and I've cemented, and I'm really in the minority here, but I really enjoy that film. Because it just, I don't know what it is. I just think it's a whole lot of fun. And controversially, I think I prefer it to Part 5. and even potentially part 6 as well. So I don't know why it is. Maybe it's the bitchy girl character gets an axe to the head. It's just full of fun dialogue, and it's a good time. And if it had all the gore left in, it would be right up there, I think. So that's what I've been watching recently. So. Okay, and what we're going to do next, we're going to have a look at some feedback. And Joseph, have you got anything from your end?
Several, actually.
That wasn't meant to be rude. That wasn't meant to be rude. So please, Erik, put your mind back. Get your mind out of the gutter.
I'm lost. I don't know what's going on here. Anyway, This is from Scott, who is actually my brother. He says, "Hey guys, love the podcast, and not just because I'm related to someone on the panel, but because it really is purely entertaining and informative. I learn something new every time, and I'm laughing my guts out as well, no pun intended. Truly livens me up on a Monday while I toil away at my awful desk job. Keep up the great work, Scott." This is from Johnny Krug. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He says, "Hello, gents. I just wanted to let you know how much I'm enjoying your podcast. I've been a horror fan forever, and slasher films are my absolute favorite subgenre. The problem is most shows don't focus on slashers and only include them every once in a while. Then I found that Hysteria continues. Finding a podcast dedicated to just slasher films was like receiving a wicked great gift. You are my absolute favorite horror show on the web now, and I wait excited for each new episode. Keep up the great work. Your show is truly unique and awesome, and I hope it's around for a very long time. Take care, Johnny." And finally, I have another from, he didn't really leave his name, unless his name is Newty, Newty, Newty. Okay, he says, "Hello guys, I've listened to your first 5 episodes, and I love the show. Keep them coming. The interviews are awesome. Also, keep up the great work, Newty."
Excellent. Well, I've got a couple here. The first one is from a guy called Cameron Parry, who says, "Hi guys, just wanted to drop you a line in appreciation of the terrific podcast you guys produce every fortnight or so. Makes the drive hit to work here in Melbourne, Australia, all that more enjoyable. Definitely keep up the good work." And also there I have another message, the last one from someone called Robert. He says, "Hello Justin, I just want to drop you a line to let you know that I really enjoyed your book Teenage Wasteland, still available in all good bookshops of course. I am a huge slasher fan. Through your book I discovered a website, Hysteria Lives, and the podcast. I was pleasantly surprised to see a podcast devoted to one of my guilty favourites, House of Death. I've listened to that episode and also the ones on Curtains and Happy Birthday to Me. The podcasts are always fun and informative, and I can't wait to hear more. I'm also from Tennessee, so enjoy listening to my fellow Southerner, Joseph. Keep up the good work, and thanks," from Robert. So
Thank you, Robert.
So where do you think you come from, Nathan? I don't know, but...
Nathan's
I guess my accent's not good enough.
He's from Jersey, actually.
I'm really surprised at the amount of love for House of Death. Not that I don't like it, but I'm just surprised that there's a lot of people out there who do seem to like it too.
It is slightly bizarre, isn't it? But
it's also, always good to have more fans of that movie.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it's better than Graduation.
No.
I played the 5th.
Fair enough. But I'm surprised how many people from Tennessee that we're getting. There seems to be like an apex of slashing.
Well, we got indoor plumbing down here now, so we got computers too.
Excellent. Okay, well, on that bombshell, shall we move to our top 3s? I think is that what we had next? Top 3s.
Wait. I'm going to give out the email address, as we always do.
Okay.
That is the _hysteria continues at gmail.com. And for the American audiences, that is the .hysteria.continues at gmail.com. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, and we're going to go on to our top 3s. And as I said before, we had a suggestion to talk about our top 3 slasher movie scores. And we've taken that and we've run with it. I think it's probably something we can come back to and revisit time and time again because there's so many good slasher movie scores out there. We haven't limited it just to scores. We've also put in there, I think all of us got at least one song. And talking of songs, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I put together a compilation of 80s slasher movie songs on a CD called Saturday Night Cleaver. and it's something I've been working on for years and years and years, and I finally kind of finished it off. Then I got cold feet because I thought, well, actually, I don't own any of these, so whether or not I wasn't planning to put it out in any commercial sense, but if anyone's interested in listening to it, it's online, and just drop me a line at that email address or through Hysteria Lives, and I'll send you a link so you can download it. But without further ado, shall we play the songs first and then talk about them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, first up, here's Joseph's number 3.
Ha ha, fooled you.
Oh, you cad.
Was that Toya or Susie?
That was Toya. That was Don't Fall in Love, I Said, by Toya Wilcox.
Yes.
Actually, that was Face to Face by Factor 4 from the film Island of Blood. A very, very rotten but catchy tune, I think.
Yeah, it is. It definitely sticks in your head like a knife. No, but it's kind of from a film that I'm not hugely a fan of, but I need to revisit at some point. But that song is quite catchy. And what was the first song?
Toya.
Don't Fall in Love, I Said, by Toya Wilcox.
Was that Toya?
Mid-80s Toya, yes.
Oh, gosh. Right, okay. Oh, well.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, gosh.
Very good, wasn't it?
We converted him, Eric.
Yeah.
I thought it was Tiffany or something. Or
It was Debbie Gibson.
Debbie Gibson. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that was great. Thank you, Joseph. Anything else you want to say about that oral masterpiece? Oral masterpiece? Yeah.
You just oral or oral?
Oral. I think I'm going for.
No, I like Island of Blood, and like I said, that song kind of just sticks in your head, and once you hear it, you just can't get rid of it. So,
like herpes.
You'll be singing it the whole day, and there's that whole bit where he's like, saw me, spear me, stab me. I didn't include that bit, but if I did,
my favorite was boil me.
Yeah.
Boil me.
That's when the guy gets thrown into the swimming pool, the heated swimming pool.
Because there's that great bit in New Year's Evil, isn't there, where the female DJ says, "Go boil your hair."
I know,
which is kind of, it must be some lost early '80s kind of sort of thing. But
we can move on now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go on to Nathan. Here's your number 3. Oh, so thank you, Nathan. So why did you choose that wonderful funky tune?
I think it's because it's funky. You're right. I have no idea who sings that, but y'all know what movie it's from, right?
Maniac. Yeah.
It's something to do with Kid Creole and the Coconuts.
That's right. It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's really incongruous, isn't it? Because Maniac's such a grim film, and that's a really cheesy, funny, disco, funky number is saying, wear something nice in case you die tonight, or whatever. It would be better suited. I think it's a great tune.
You'll leave a pretty corpse behind.
Yeah, it's strange. So why did you choose that, Nathan? Just because it's funky, or?
Yeah, it's funky. It's kind of fun, and I kind of agree that it's kind of a weird fit in a movie like Maniac, but I still kind of like it, and I find myself singing it or humming it sometimes. So it's another one of those that kind of can get stuck in your head.
Absolutely, yes, like many things. Okay, so thank you, Nathan. We'll keep the entendres to a minimum today, I promise you. We haven't got on to number 2s yet, but okay. Well, no, thank you for that, Nathan. And Erik, here's your...
Before you play it, Justin, I've made a mistake here. When you said top 3 scores, I thought of something different. So my number 3 is actually Ryan Giggs' goal in the FA Cup semi-final against Arsenal in 1999. Sorry.
Is it?
Yeah, because he runs past about 5 defenders and slots it into the top of the net and sends United through to the final.
Oh.
So that's my number 3.
Is it? Because apparently there's some rumours about Ryan Giggs, isn't there, which we can't go into at the moment. So we won't talk about that in case we...
I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Well, this is you need to move to Europe.
Lost.
Yeah, so...
It's football related. Yeah, now play my number 3.
Okay,
is it something to do with soccer hooliganism?
It's something to do with soccer players.
And balls.
Well, they're all hooligans, so they're all hooligans.
Yeah, that's my number 3. Can you guess the movie?
Annie.
Annie, yes, it's from Annie. Of course it is. It's the instrumental of Tomorrow. Now that's anyone know the movie?
It's Tenebrae.
It is Tenebrae. Yes,
I know that because I'm looking at it at the soundtrack name. But
it's Goblin, but not strictly Goblin. They're credited as Claudio Simonetti, Fabio Bignatelli, and Massimo Morante. So it's not actually strictly Goblin. But what I like about it is it's kind of very electronic, and it's very much as if Depeche Mode had come along and scored a horror film in the early 80s. I like that sort of cold staccato feel about it, which sort of mirrors the atmosphere of the film. And actually the title of the film is Flashing. So Justin, do you like Flashing?
Sorry?
Do you like Flashing?
Do I like Flashing?
Yeah, the track, I mean, Flashing.
I don't... Do I know... Sorry, I'm...
Sorry, the track is called Flashing.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's not actually called Tenebrae main title, it's called Flashing. And
so he thought you were talking about flashing people. That's what he thought.
Yes. So I just wanted to ask you if you enjoyed Flashing.
I enjoy it very much, especially on a warm summer's evening. So I might put it on later, but no, thank you for that. Okay, well... I'm going to move swiftly on to my number 3, and we're staying with the Italians, and here's my number 3. Sorry. Anyway, that is the theme tune by Bruno Nicolai, who is one of the great Italian composers for all the giallos and all of the kind of the great cult movies, along with Ennio Morricone and Stelvio Cipriani. And I love that. It's from Eyeball, Umberto Lenzi's uber cheesy Eyeball, which is, I'd love to cover that at some point in the show, because if you don't know, if you haven't watched Eyeball, you must watch it because it's fantastic. And it just very, very briefly, it's all set on the Spanish around the Costa Brava, and it's a coach trip where an assorted motley crew of tourists go around, and one by one they're being picked off. That's
the movie you're talking about.
Yeah. And
I've seen it a long time ago, but basically they get killed one by one, but they decide to keep going on with their vacation.
Exactly. Yes. Nothing stops the coach trip. And every time they get back on the coach, that theme tune comes on, and I do love it so. But I could spend a whole show talking about Italian movie soundtracks, one of my big loves, and I'm sure we'll come back to those. So that's my number 3. So I think it's time, Joseph, we see or hear your big number 2.
Oh, no.
Very atmospheric.
Anyone want to guess?
I can't remember. I don't know.
Driving Miss Daisy? No?
Yes, that's exactly. Composed by Morgan Freeman when he wasn't acting. Actually, that is... Yes. Actually, that is Jonathan Elias's score for Children of the Corn, which I think the score makes that movie, because the movie tends to get a little silly towards the finale, but that score has always stuck with me ever since I was young, and I really, really love it.
That's a good choice. It's one of those, because I haven't seen Children of the Corn for many years now, but it did sort of, it kind of got something in the back of my mind working, so I kind of recognised it. But aren't they supposed to be
45 minutes of the movie is really creepy, but then at the end it kind of has all these really, really hideous special effects and really cheesy puns, and it kind of goes off the rails. But like I said, that music really elevates the film to like a higher level, I think.
Because they're supposed to be remaking it, aren't they? Or they're talking about remaking it.
Or they have. I mean, they have so many remakes and sequels of that series in particular. I mean, I've kind of lost track. I mean, I've only seen the first one, and I saw like a brief moment of like number 5 or number 6, like 20 years ago. I don't know.
Okay, I have a problem here. Sorry.
Okay.
Children of the Corn is not a slasher film. And if this was the criteria, then I would have put I've Had the Time of My Life as my number.
Children of the Corn is a slasher film.
No, it's not.
It's a bunch of kids slashing up people one by one.
Okay, well, if Children of the Corn is a slasher movie, then I'm a supermodel called Susan.
You are a supermodel.
Well, we can't see what you're wearing, Erik, which may be for the best. But you're saying you should be able to put Dirty Dancing on?
Yes. If I'd known, I would have put I've Had the Time of My Life as my number 1.
Does anyone die in Dirty Dancing?
No, there is an illegal abortion in it, though.
I know Patrick Swayze's dead now, but that doesn't count, Erik. So that is not a slasher movie. So
yeah, well, neither is Children of the Corn.
To be fair, I die every time. Hey. Well, I die every time I watch Dirty Dancing. So there.
Okay. Well, before Joseph comes behind Erik and punches in the ring, I think we'll move on to Nathan's number 2. Another atmospheric one there. Nathan, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that's by Mark Donahue, and it's for the anthology, the 1989 anthology, After Midnight. And yes, Erik, I know what you're thinking. I know you're thinking the same thing. But, I mean, I realize it is on the line, but it's the closest I'm going to get to an all-slasher anthology. I mean, the first one features a killer who likes to hack people up with hedge clippers and a couple getting trapped in his house. The second one is basically a slasher with dogs stalking these 4 girls one by one. And the last one is a maniac stalking an all-night telephone operator. So, you know, I guess you can't call it a full-on slasher, but it was close enough for me.
Not as close as dancing, but close enough.
Yeah. Oh. Well, I think this is fair enough. I think we're going to come back and look at these in the future anyway, aren't we? I mean, we're going to do more of these because there's loads more to do. But I think we've got another atmospheric one coming up, haven't we, Erik, with your... Is it
atmospheric-ish, yes.
Your big number 2. Here we go. And do you want to tell us a little bit about your choice?
Well, that's Rick Wakeman. Him off of Yes. Big 70s prog rock band. Surprisingly, scoring a tuppence slasher film from 1980 called The Burning. What I like about that is, I mean, there's a lot of films around that time had sort of one man and his synthesizer doing the score. And, I mean, The Burning does sound really dated now, I have to say, but the melody is quite good. Production values are kind of nostalgic. I'm just really surprised they got somebody of his caliber, if you want to say that about Rick Wakeman, to score the film.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's quite... I mean, considering he could have done such some like really wanky kind of prog rock thing for it, which you would have done. But to actually do something that was actually very much of its time, wasn't it? It was very timely.
Yeah?
Eric, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Are you an owner of a lonely heart?
I'm not the owner of a lonely heart, no. And that is the only Yes song I could sing off the top of my head. I'm not familiar with any of their 17-minute epics from the 70s.
Take it away. Go ahead.
Owner of a lonely heart.
I was just kidding, by the way.
we can always edit that out, or edit something even worse in, perhaps. Yeah. So
something worse, like a Susie song.
Well, I don't think that would be worse, Joseph, would it? But
have Susie and the Banshees appeared on the soundtrack of any films?
Yes, Out of Bounds, the great 80s
Jeepers Creepers, didn't they do Susie's song on the radio when he was flipping the radio station?
That was Peekaboo. Yeah, well, they didn't. Oh, right, yeah. It wasn't them singing it. They cheaped out and got some cover band to do it. But have you seen Out of Bounds? It's got Anthony Edwards. Is it from? It's a great 80s teen thriller. It's not a horror movie, but it's got Susie and the Banshees doing Cities in Dust in a LA club. I love that song, yeah. And it's a great film. If you've not seen Out of Bounds, it's got loads of good music on the soundtrack. It's the epitome of teenage 80s thriller movie. I mean, it just screams mid 80s. It's really worth seeing, and not just to see Susie. But apart from that, I don't know. But on to my number 2 is you've all been very, very reserved with very atmospheric numbers. Mine's just a little bit more on the cheesy side. Is the theme tune to another film, and I imagine Erik might tip a table here because that's not strictly a slasher movie either, of Midnight, the John Russo sort of witchcraft kind of semi-slasher in the same way as Children of the Corn is a semi-slasher movie, but Dirty Dancing isn't a slasher movie. But I just love it because it's kind of the lyrics are fantastic. It's kind of whoever had the idea of doing a kind of a folk pop song to accompany quite a cheesy but also quite a violent film and quite a sleazy film, I think it's kind of great juxtaposition between the two. Is someone eating Tic Tacs? Is that you, Erik?
Oh, sorry, that was me supping on my rum and coke.
Okay.
And that was the sound of my ice cubes.
Oh, is it? Okay, that's all right. I thought you were eating Tic Tacs or something, but I didn't mean to pull you out on that. At least it's not a chunky Kit Kat.
No, it's not a chunky Kit Kat. Okay. That's for later.
That's for later. Okay. So yeah, but that's my number 3. So we're coming up to sorry.
It's your number 2.
Number 2. Sorry.
And yes. Thanks for telling us, Nance.
Indeed. Now, Joseph, here's your number 1. That's very relaxing.
Yeah. So like Brian Eno.
Yeah.
That is Pino Donaggio from Body Double. It's a very kind of a romantic / thrilling kind of setup to the action that takes place in Body Double, which is essentially on the line, again, as a slasher film. It's more of a Rear Window ripoff. But no, that entire movie, the Pino Donaggio soundtrack, I had thoughts of what could I pick? I mean, every piece of music he does in the film is really, 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 really well done. But I went with the whole telescope theme of him watching the girl because it sets up the movie. Whoa, that was crazy. Did you hear that?
Yeah,
yes.
Sorry,
that was weird. Okay,
was that the Jesus and Mary chain, was it?
No, it's a cat.
Right.
Was that you? I thought that was me.
No, whenever I do a podcast, the cats always decide they've got one on my lap, and one's just walked in and shaken her Susie bangles at me. So,
wow. So we got some pussy on the show.
My two cats also make appearances, but y'all don't hear them.
Well, funny enough, I did, because I didn't know what that was from, but I thought it sounded more akin to, I don't know, sort of some kind of softcore 80s porn movie.
Well, which essentially Body Double kind of has that softcore
of course,
porn thing going on.
Excellent. Well, no, thank you. I mean, I think it's really interesting. I think it'll be interesting if people listen to this and if they want to feedback about what would be their top threes. And I think this is something we probably could come back quite easily to do again. And so it'll be interesting to see what we come back to. Should we go on to Nathan? Your number one?
Yes.
Here it is. Nathan, do you want to take us through that?
Yes, that is the theme for Alice Sweet Alice, a.k.a. Communion. It's by Stephen Lawrence. I love all the music in that movie. It's actually hard to pinpoint one of my favorite, pieces of music from that film. I think it gives a right kind of mix of scary and even kind of sad and depressing, the tune in it. Because, I mean, when you watch Alice, Sweet Alice, it's a scary film, but it also it's kind of a sad film, too. I mean, all the trauma that the poor mother in that film must endure, like during the whole film. Everybody around her that she's close to starts getting killed. And, she spends most of the movie in tears and in hysterics. So I thought the score really matched the movie.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie, isn't it? And it's a shame Alfred Soul didn't really do a great deal after that film.
He should have done more.
He did Pandemonium, didn't he? The kind of early 80s slasher spoof. But it would have been good to actually seen him do a straight-ahead slasher film as well, which I kind of Alice, Sweet Alice, I kind of guess is. But it's one, if you haven't seen, it's definitely worth checking out. So that's a very good number one. Thank you, Nathan. And I've got a feeling that Eric's is going to be taking us in a slightly different direction with this one. Yeah, do you want to tell us about that then, Erik?
That is the tight denim-tacular song, Touch Me All Night Long. And now, can you name the singer?
Mark Patton. No, sorry.
He's the dancer.
Yeah, he's the dancer. Okay.
Who's singing the song? Can anyone remember?
Is that Sheila? What's her face?
No, actually, I thought you were going to say Kathy Dennis, because she had a hit with it around 1990, 1991. But that version is actually by Wish featuring Fonda Rae. And what I like about that is that not only is the song really, really catchy and very 80s and kind of the sort of my cup of tea back then, but also when you watch it on the film, you get to see somebody close a drawer with their arse.
Have you been trying that out yourself?
I have tried it out, and it is very effective.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
What the fuck are we talking about?
We're talking about Nightmare... Sorry, I should have mentioned that is from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. Where Mark Patton is dancing on the bed, closing a drawer with his arse, putting on funny shades.
I forgot about that. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. It's only one of the best scenes in the movie.
Exactly.
It is one of the best... one of the best scenes in the movie. We were talking about guilty pleasures a few weeks ago, and that would be one of mine. Is Freddy's Revenge. I just love it from start to finish.
Absolutely.
Well, it's been a while since I've seen it. I need to watch it again.
I watched it recently. Actually,
I have to go. There's a Jesse on the phone.
I finally understand what that means now.
I had to school him in the art of Jesseisms.
Yes. Okay. Well,
just like I also had to school him in the art of telling him what a friend of Dorothy is, and he should know.
No, I knew what a friend of Dorothy is. I just didn't understand why it's called Friend of Dorothy.
Right. Okay.
Well, see, there's an episode of Married with Children that should have given it away, because I know how you're a fan of Married with Children, where Peg goes out dancing with the gay guy who's cheating on his husband, and he says, Peg, you are the most beautiful woman here, except for my mother and except for Judy Garland, of course. And I figured you would have picked up on that.
No, I didn't.
Oh.
Well,
what kind of gay man are you?
It's an education.
I have a thick skull, okay? That's all I got to say.
Okay.
Right. Well, I was going to say, as we draw this neatly to an end, We're probably going to get some flack for not choosing some of the big guns, because now we're up to, there's only one choice, my choice left, and we haven't done the proper theme tune to A Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th or things, but of course we could come back to those. But of course, what slasher movie score would be complete without this? That was the very simple and very effective theme to Halloween. And I don't know, it's kind of a well-known story, but with Halloween, when John Carpenter showed the film to an executive at 20th Century Fox, I think it was, without the music, and she turned to him and said, "That's just not scary, that's just the least scary film I've ever seen." And then he put the music to it, and then I don't know if he showed her again, but the film just came alive with the music, and the music just drives that film forward. It still gives me shivers, and I always remember actually when we went to see Halloween H2O, which obviously is not a patch on the original or the first sequel, but the moment when Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis, suddenly just turns and goes after Michael Myers with the axe, then that theme music suddenly just comes in. And I just remember the audience applauding. It was just that kind of, it's that music that stays with you. And, and I couldn't let this top three scores go without, it must be my number one favourite score to a slasher movie. And, of course, my number one ever favourite movie.
Well, it's like you said, there's so much music to choose from. I mean, I'm sure we'll get back to even more in the future.
The thing about Halloween, too, is there are so many tracks in that movie that are so good. My favorite is when Jamie Lee Curtis is doing that slow walk across the street, and the tune they're playing then. Is it Laurie's theme?
I think it is, yeah.
Do you want to dun, that one? Or was that Jaws? No. Jaws. I'm not very musical, so I can't. I won't be able to free.
I actually prefer the revamped synthesized score to Halloween 2 myself. I think it takes a good tune and makes it even better, especially when when it's overlaid on those opening credits of Halloween 2, where the skull splits in half and there's this. Where the pumpkin splits in half and there's a skull inside. I think it's really, really effective.
It is. I listened to that and I just thought it'd be a good one to go with, but I decided to go with the kind of the original.
Can I just say it would have been my number one as well, except we didn't want to overlap too much, so I chose more offbeat ones.
Yes.
And I'm surprised nobody went for Friday the 13th, because that would have been in my top three as well if I'd known that nobody else was going for it. Any of the scores from 1, 2, 3 or 4, which I think are really good.
Well, I'm sure we come back to those. So, those are our top three at the moment. I mean, they're kind of random choices of things,
subject to change.
Subject to change, absolutely. So I'm sure we'll come back to those at some point in the future. I think moving on, we are going to, before we get on to talking about Superstition, our feature presentation of the week, we're going to have a question from Joseph. What's the burning issue?
All right. Are there any slasher films that the three of you've seen that you've done a complete 180 on? Like, say you watched it and you loved it, and then you watched it again and then you hated it, or vice versa?
Who wants to go first?
Justin.
Well, I was trying to think about this, and it's funny because all I can think back is when I was 14 or 15. When I was kind of getting into sort of horror movies, slasher movies, when I first started getting to see them on video. And there's a couple of films. One, probably the most pronounced, and again, is it arguably a slasher movie? And it isn't. But is it arguably a giallo? And I say it is arguably a giallo, and I've talked about this before, is Suspiria, Dario Argento's Suspiria. And I saw that on video when I was about 14 or 15 with a friend of mine. And we hated it. We just thought it was a complete pile of shit, complete pile of crap. And I didn't touch it for years after that, until maybe 15 years ago or so. I finally watched it again and realised what an amazing movie it was. Now, of course, that's all down to the fact that I was a 14-year-old boy who just wanted to see exploding heads and things like that. I wasn't really interested in any subtlety, and of course, Suspiria is not subtle. But also the fact is, like many of the videos that were around in that time after the Video Nasties panic, had pretty much all of the gore cut out of them. For instance, not a slasher movie, but Living Dead at Manchester Morgue was re-released on video with no violence at all. And I just remember watching it thinking, what was the fuss? You know, I just didn't understand. Of course, had everything taken out. The only other film that I've done a complete 180 on or 360 on is I think it's probably Pieces, actually, again for similar reasons. I saw a very cut version, and I think I'd just come off the back of watching films like Friday the 13th and Halloween and all those films I took very seriously at the time, and I watched Pieces and I just thought it was complete rubbish. And of course I've grown to love it for the trash epic that it is today, and I've learned to accept and embrace those kind of trash aesthetics. So for me, those are the ones I've done a kind of complete 180 on. I don't know if there's any films that I've absolutely loved at the time and I've gone back to and thought were a bit dull. I'm sure there probably are, but I'll have to think about those. So that's my tuppence, as it were.
Before I ask anyone else, I'm going to say mine was probably the Final Terror. I watched that. I don't remember if I rented it or if it was on television, but I hated it. And I watched it again, and I kind of liked it. And the more I watch it, the more I pick up on things that I like about it. But I think for me, that's one of the ones I've done a 180 on. What about you, Nathan?
Well, the biggest one that I can remember is Class Reunion Massacre.
Ooh, that one too. I forgot about that one. That's a good one.
When I first watched it, which has been probably over 10 years ago, I hated it. I mean, I couldn't stand it. I thought it was one of the worst movies I'd seen at the time. And then, I don't know, it was a few years later, something, just made me want to watch it again, and I did, and I was like, well, there was a few things about it that, were not as bad as I remembered, and then, I don't know, it was about a year after that I decided to watch it again, so finally I was like, why am I watching this so many times? Oh, yeah, because I think I like it now. But I actually really enjoy it now. I think it's very moody and atmospheric. It's got a good soundtrack. It does get kind of muddled, towards the end with the whole extra thumb and all that business, but I still really like it. I think it's a creepy movie.
And our Dancing Erik. What about you, Dancing Erik?
Me, Dancing Erik. Justin stole actually two of my ideas, because I too hated Pieces and Hysteria when I saw them first. I saw them in the mid-'80s when my only exposure to slasher films were the sort of slicker produced American productions. I had no appreciation for kitsch back then, so Pieces was rubbish. It was a 0 out of 10 movie for me. Suspiria completely let me down because it wasn't the film I was expecting, and it was only until I saw it in widescreen on a big television that I began to appreciate it a bit more. But what I find with slasher films is that my first impression is usually the one that sticks with me. It's other films of other genres I do complete 180s on. I remember particularly Alien Resurrection. I loved when I saw it in the cinema, but now I can't stand it, and if I ever see it again, it'll be too soon. But with slasher films, I tend to do 45 degrees more than the 180s, I have to say. I mean, I used to love Jason Lives, Friday the 13th Part 6. That was the first Friday the 13th film I saw, and I remember thinking it was the best film ever for a long time, and whisper this, I made a copy of it on VHS, but and watched it I watched it non-stop for about 3 minutes. I watched it non-stop for about...
He just frowns on you.
He does frown on me. He frowns on me for many reasons. He doesn't like my penchant for chunky Kit Kats, for starters. No, I think what happened to me with Jason Lives was I overwatched it. I watched it too many times, and now I'm bored with it, but also I don't like the humour in it. I don't like the comedy elements. So that was a film that I once loved, and now... I don't hate it now, but I'm tired of it, weary of it. I don't go near it anymore, really.
Well, it's too bad that's going to be the next movie we cover.
Aww. I would watch it again for the sake of the podcast.
Okay, well, that's fallen on that big sword, Erik, which I'm sure you do most evenings. So, are we finished with our questions, or is there anything else you wanted? Do you want to?
No, go ahead. Move on.
Okay. Well, what I'll do is, I think it's time that we go into our feature. I have in my hand, if you can you hear this? that is the sound of an ancient clamshell of my much cherished VTC, which is a video label back in the UK, Pre-Cert. And if you're not from the UK, then Pre-Cert is essentially, that was the videos that were around before certification, before censorship was put into video back in the mid-80s, so around the time of the video nasty. So this kind of predated them. That's why they're called pre-certification. And it's a beautiful, as all the VTC videos were, like a golden box. And I have in where I'm sitting, I have the Scaremaker, I can see The Outing, which is aka Scream, Zombie Holocaust, Changeling, Revenge of the Bogeyman, The Black Cat, what else? Incubus, and The House of Exorcism, my little collection of VTCs. But Superstition is probably my most cherished one of those, and I'm going to read the back of it. And of course, if you've listened to these podcasts in the past, you'll know that we're going to be exploring pretty much every crevice, as it were, of these films. So it's going to include spoilers. So if you haven't seen this film, then proceed with caution. The back of the video box says, in 1784, the witch Elronda Sharak is sentenced to death by crucifixion. Sorry, I should know better, being a Catholic, or a very lapsed Catholic. But anyway, as Satan's daughter, her evil spirit cannot be destroyed and lurks into the lake known as Black Pond. 200 years later, a series of bizarre killings shocked the area, and the young Reverend David Thompson assists the police with their investigations while installing the new vicar and his family into the house by the lake. The last family who lived there all met with gruesome deaths. The Reverend's daughter is attacked, and his son meets with a hideous death. And while Thompson researches the horrible facts of Alondra's past, the rest of the family and the chief of police are brutally murdered. So that is Superstition. Now, again, this film is something, a film, I must have watched it 20 or 30 times. Probably saw it. It came out in video in the UK in 1983, which is the date on this video here. It's probably the date I first saw it, so we're talking many years ago. It was a staple of our local video shop. I only found out recently that it was a Section 3 release, in so much Section 1 and 2 were, the Section 1 was the video nasty, Section 2 was films liable for seizure and prosecution, whereas Superstition was actually Section 3, which was liable for seizure but not necessarily prosecution. Having said that, I was able to get hold of it when I was 14 or 15, and unlike Hysteria, this film really hit the spot for me, and it still does. You know, I watched it again this afternoon, this time on DVD, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Coming up, we've got an interview, as I said before, with Steve Laporte, who did some of the special effects on the film, but also on Hysteria Lives. When you listen to this podcast, up on the Hysteria Lives web pages will be interviews with Carol Goldman, who played the witch in the flashback sequences. And Steve talks about in his interview about how he also worked on The Howling and how they did the bladder effects. That's what the producers wanted. And of course, if you were around back then, as I was, we knew that every video, we were looking for them to outdo each other. And you had all the creature features like American Wealth in London with the special effects, just going one on top of the other, everyone trying to outdo each other. And they kind of tried that with Superstition, with the witch's face kind of, the bladder effects under her face. So her face was kind of growing and shifting. And Carol talks about the makeup effects and how she got the part as the witch, which is really interesting. And also, as interesting, another interview on the site is with the writer-producer Michael O'Sabjel, which I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He talks about how he got involved in the film. And one of the best bits in the film for me is the beginning 10 minutes, which, if you've seen the film, you'll know very well. And it starts with, kind of basically classic slasher movie setup with two teenagers necking in a car. And then suddenly a face appears at the window. They scream and drive off. It's two young teenage boys who have been playing a joke. but they get trapped inside the house. One is decapitated by the witch, and his head explodes in a microwave oven, which drives his friend to jump through a window, which slams down on top of him and cuts him in half, with his legs falling bloodily to the floor outside. And as you can imagine, as a 14, 15-year-old kid, and I used to watch these. Americans probably won't know this term, but I expect Erik will. We used to bunk off, which is basically play hooky from school. On one afternoon a week, and we'd hire these films, and we'd all sit round and scream and laugh and have a great time. And it's one of my, it's not my misspent youth, because I think it's very well spent youth for me, certainly. But it was one of our staples, and we watched this film many, many times. I've got lots more information about the film I'll talk about, but I was wondering, you guys, what did you feel about revisiting Superstition? How about you, Erik?
Yeah, like you said, I think the opening is really, really strong, and I think that is a possible flaw in the film, is that I think it peaks a bit too early. I think those two teenage boys get killed, and then the death with the circular saw, that all comes in the first 20 minutes. And then after that, I think it struggles to match those moments, although I still do think it's a terrific movie. Now, I only caught this about 10 years ago for the first time, and if I saw this when I was 13 or 14, I imagine it would probably be higher up my list of favourite movies, because it would be exactly the type of thing I was looking for back then. It has the gore, and it has the silliness, and it doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's quite short. It's only 80 minutes, so it doesn't outstay its welcome. It's got a huge body count. I mean, everyone practically died, and it doesn't spare anyone. I mean, kids, mothers, priests, everyone dies in this film.
Equal opportunities slasher movie.
It is very much. But I mean, again, I'm having issues with whether this is a slasher movie or not, Justin, I'm afraid.
Well, I would say it is a slasher movie, definitely. I know it's borderline, but when I spoke to Michael O'Sabjal, he said the idea behind it was they were very much looking to do a supernatural slasher movie, and so that was their intention, to make a slasher movie, but with a supernatural villain. So therefore, that is my get out clause, and why I think.
Well, no, I don't mind, because I do really like the film. So, as I said, I like the music as well. The music that you played at the top of the show, it really reminds me, again, going back to Goblin, it reminds me of their music maybe for something like Deep Red. That pulsating drum and piano beat that happens whenever a bit of action kicks into the film. Yes. It's quite unusual for the time, because, as I said earlier, it was either a man and a synthesizer, or else it was a big orchestral score where the par for these type of films. So it was quite unusual. It gives a kind of a European feel.
It's because David Gibney did the music of this film. He didn't actually do a great deal else, but I thought the music is one of the strongest aspects of the film. I thought it was very, very effective. Very effective. How about you, Joseph? How did you find the film?
I like Superstition. I watched it again last night, and the one thing I wanted to mention is the very beginning scene. I mean, immediately you can have a drinking game with how many times that one guy says the name Artie. He's like, Artie, where are you, Artie?
Yes,
Artie,
yeah.
Artie, are you there, Artie? If you go along with that, you will be properly hammered by the time the opening sequence is done. But what I like about the film is it kind of reminds me of like a precursor to Final Destination with some of the death scenes, like the circular saw. It has like this Rube Goldberg like cause and effect thing where the circular saw falls and hits the floor and ricochets into the priest's throat, and it saws through his throat and there's blood gushing out. It kind of reminded me of that whole the unseen specter of death causing these massive gory death scenes, and it has sort of a kind of a brooding atmosphere. It seems like it's a companion piece to the Incubus. They have that gothic house, and they both employ flashbacks, so like religious flashbacks to accentuate their evil, and it has a really, really short running time, so it never really wears out its welcome. And like you both said, everyone dies. They kill kids, they kill the priests, even the hero. I mean, we're getting into spoiler territory, obviously. Even the hero gets his in the end. I think the one thing that kind of soured me on it, I mean, I really liked the film, but towards the end, when it kind of gets into when the hero is running around the house with the cross and he's trying to dispel the evil, the score in that particular part of the film, I thought it was a little, I mean, it seemed a little too upbeat to me for such a moody film. And if I had to, give it its marks, that would be the one thing I would say about it. But other than that, I really enjoyed the film. I'd give it maybe like a 6 out of 10.
Oh, only a 6? Right, okay. Well, how about you, Nathan? What's your thoughts? Thank you, Joseph.
I really enjoy Superstition a lot, and for some reason, I've never quite held it up as an 80s classic. And I think Erik finally, what Erik said, I finally realized what it is if I would have seen it as a kid, I'm like Erik, that's the kind of movie I wanted to watch as a kid. And I never watched it then. I didn't watch it till I was older and more cynical, I guess. I still really enjoy it. And it seems to be one of those movies that kind of teeters on the line of being scary and cheesy. Like there'll be like a scene I think is pretty creepy, and then it's kind of followed up by something that is very cheesy. It's a really entertaining movie, and like Erik and Joseph have said, it's got a short running time. It's got a huge body count. Just about everybody I remember in that movie dies. And it's got some really good death scenes, the circular saw scene. And it's also got my favorite bit of dialogue of all time, which you played in the intro, when the
shut your bitchy mouth. I was going to mention
young Crystal and Alexis wannabes, Dynasty, pre-Dynasty, shut your bitchy mouth.
Well, shall I just play it?
Oh, I love that scene. I love that scene.
I've got shall I just play it for you here? I've got it here.
Yeah.
Daddy's down there. It'll be all right. Oh, sure. Daddy's down there. He knows what to do. Daddy always knows just exactly what to do.
Cheryl, don't.
Especially when he wants to run lives. That's a crack-up, isn't it? He's a burnout, and he's trying to run my life. Cheryl, he can't do anything right. He's a waste, Mom. A burnout. Shut your bitchy mouth!
Yes, there's a memorable line of dialogue there.
I love that dialogue so much.
Yeah.
It's a jewel in the crown. So, what have you got any other? We can come back to talking about it. I just wonder if we're talking about the special effects. It might be worth going to the interview now with Steve Laporte, and then coming back and talking about the film a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
sounds good.
Does that sound good? Okay. And here we go. We're honoured today to be joined by Steve Laporte, one of the hardest working and best regarded special effects artists in Hollywood today. He's worked on such blockbusters as Terminator 2 and 3, and was key special effects makeup artist on Van Helsing, the makeup department head on TV's Lost, and countless more. But today we're going back much earlier in his career to the early 1980s and his work in the horror genre, and specifically Superstition. Thanks for joining us today, Steve.
Well, thank you for having me. It's nice to know someone remembers something I did so long ago.
Well, it's about 30 years ago now, isn't it?
I actually got married on Superstition, and we just had our 30th anniversary.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent. Well, I was going to say your first credited role was for Demented, I believe, in 1980. So I was going to, how did you get involved in the special effects business?
Even some of the names of the films I've worked on were released under different titles in which I worked on them. So, originally Superstition was called Witch.
Yeah, that's right. It got released in the UK quite a few years later under the title The Witch. So it's interesting to know that was the original title.
Yeah, it was. I started off doing low-budget films in the late 70s, actually 79. I moved to California and I guess right after Christmas of 78. And for 4 years prior to that, I had been traveling as a clown with Ringling Brothers Circus.
Oh, really?
Which got me into makeup. I originally was going to be a commercial artist. I went to technical school out of high school and had a scholarship, which led to a waiting period to start college. And that summer, the Ringling Brothers Circus came to my hometown and held auditions for clowns. And not really seeing that it was something long-term, thought it was just for the short period they were there. I said, sure, I'll act crazy for a week in front of audiences. No one will know who I am.
Yeah.
and kind of subsequently found out that it was an audition for the Clown School, which is a training ground for the circus arts. A few months later, I got a call and a letter that I had been accepted, which really changed my life forever. It probably is responsible for making me, putting me into the field that I am today. So off to the circus I went, and of course there you're introduced to, makeup, some special effects. They taught us about pyrotechnics, prop making, shoe making, wig making, of course makeup, comedy movement, how to put together routines and props. So you're bombarded with this kind of world of creativity. And not soon after getting a contract, after you go through the clown college process, you have to get a contract to travel on the show. Well, I was awarded a contract and spent 4 years traveling on the show. And during that time, I started studying makeup, sculpting, making small prosthetics in my tiny little cubicle on the train. Eventually, after 2 years, I moved over, I bought my own motor home and had a little bit more space to work, and I still continued my studies in makeup. And after about 4 years there, decided, it's time to go to California. We had been in California several times, and I had made some mutual friends in the film business who were doing makeup on TV shows, and we'd go and watch them do the makeup, and eventually thought this is the place to go. So after I left the circus and came to California, I came and started just making the rounds, and I met a gentleman by the name of Tom Berman. I met a guy who no one knew at the time called Stan Winston. Another guy named Rick Baker. He was working out of his garage and answered the door barefoot. Right. So those are the people that I met. And after being here for a while, I did get a job on the tour at Universal doing makeup on the Land of a Thousand Faces makeup show, which led to a side job there doing the makeup on the Incredible Hulk character, which had been introduced into the show. So it was a full-body makeup, full prosthetics on the forehead and nose, a wig. So it was a really good routine as an upcoming makeup artist to learn a chairside manner, how to work with people. And, we were doing tourists as well on some of the other areas of the makeup show. So we'd bring people in, make them up as Frankenstein, as the bride. And eventually the Land of a Thousand makeup show closed and opened up a new show called the Castle Dracula show, which again was horror makeups on people from the audience, done very quickly, old style, good old grease paint and powder, kind of reflecting the old genre of the old classic horror characters. And during that time, I had been sculpting and making molds and making masks in my garage and in my small apartment, just trying to break in and do anything I could on the outside of the tour that brought me some income. Did a few commercials. And I'd gone to see Rick Baker, and he advised me to go away, sculpt, make more things for display, show him something better to offer. And a year later, I called him up, and he was very busy, but he did say, you need to talk to Rob Bottin. And he's doing a werewolf movie called The Howling. So I called Rob, said Rick said to call him, and Rob happened to be dropping by the neighborhood that night to actually Greg Canham's house. So there's a small circle of names you're starting to hear from me. There was a community out here. He came by to drop some molds off to Greg Canham's house, came by my apartment, which looked like a mask factory. I was sculpting, making molds, airbrushing masks. He walked right into the middle of that, hired me on the spot. So I continued to work at Universal Studios on the weekends, doing a double shift, and then worked during the week for Rob, sculpting, making molds, running latex, painting masks, punching hair, gluing fur to werewolf bodies. On The Howling, working back and forth at Rob's house and my apartment. And that went on for several months. And eventually I left Universal and went full-time with Rob, which continued into almost 7 days a week, until The Howling was in shooting stages. We started filming, and then I was one of their on-set guys helping Rob manipulating the werewolf heads. I was a werewolf in a couple of the scenes of the movie. And there happened to be a break at the time where I wasn't needed. I took some time off, took a little vacation back home to Oklahoma to visit the family. Came back and I visited a friend who was in a low-budget horror film called Home Sweet Home.
Oh, yes. Yeah, well, no.
And he is a guy who is very well known now. His name is Body by Jake. His name is Jake Steinfeld.
Yeah.
He became a personal trainer, but I knew Jake from the tour at Universal. He was the Hulk character that I made up.
Okay.
So he'd gotten a break in his little horror film as the crazy killer with the knife, and I went to visit him and met a gentleman by the name of Jack Petty. And Jack was a makeup artist, a seasoned makeup artist who used to do a lot of Sam Peckinpah films. And Jack asked me if I wanted to assist him for the rest of the film. So it only had about a week to go, and the company was doing a collection of 3 films. Very low-budget films, 2 weeks shooting each. I finished Home Sweet Home with a little what we call slash and gash makeup.
Yeah.
Jack kind of took me under his wing, showed me how to do stuff right on the actor using scar plastics and materials, and really kind of broke me into the out-of-kit way to do makeup. At that point, it was all learned from a book. And I continued to work with him on another film called Terror on Tour. And then I went into another film called Slay the Joker. And these were all 3 really low-budget films. You know, I think I made $100 a day working on them, which was good money at the time.
Of course.
I made $300 a week working on The Howling.
Yeah.
And, you know, compared to the circus, that was great money. So it was slowly a steady climb. And kind of through the rough way to make films, it was very commando filmmaking. Well, on Home Sweet Home, we had a director of photography and cameraman. His name was James Roberson. And Jim brought in one day, because we were filming in an old movie theater. And one day after work, he goes, hey, I just filmed this little clip of a movie. We've just done the intro, and it's going to be my first directing job. And it's called Witch, and I'd like to show it to everybody. So it was a little 5-minute piece that they'd shot up in an old house about some teenagers sneaking into a house and then the mystical powers of the house taking over and killing them off one by one. And I go, wow, that was really cool. It was really nice to work on that. And so that was that. And it kind of went out of my head because I never knew when they were going to get their budget together. And soon after that, I started working on other little projects. I went back, worked on The Howling for a few pickup days here and there, and got other jobs. And then along came a job. I was called by a gentleman by the name of Bill Munns, who had taught at a makeup academy, had gone off on his own, like many of us, and set up a small makeup lab in their garage. And Bill had this film, Swamp Thing, he wanted me to work on. So it was a matter of, sculpting, making molds, running foam latex, baking things in the backyard ovens. It was really, like I say, commando filmmaking, pretty much at the lowest level. But we had some really talented people working with us. We had a guy named Ken Horn, who is now one of the curators of the Wax Museum in Hollywood now. He does all the, the heads and, refurbishes everything there. And a longtime friend, Dave Miller, who worked with me way back on the Universal tour. Well, Dave and I worked on Swamp Thing together, and at the same time, Bill had acquired some work on a show called The Witch.
Okay, yeah.
And he had to make a fake arm for it, like a monster arm or something, and a few other little effects. And what was the actress's name you said you spoke to, Catherine?
No, it was, where are we? Carol Goldman.
Carol.
Yeah.
Well, Carol was the witch character in the film. And what happened was Bill, being the kind of organizer of the job, pretty much did not go on the set. He had other things to do. And between the two jobs, between Swamp Thing and Witch, Dave and I were kept very busy making all these little pieces. The first day we went on the set to take something for a test, they wanted me to be their on-set makeup artist. So what I ended up doing is working out whatever Bill would have us do in the shop, and I would carry it to the set, and I would do the makeups daily. The witch character, it was a very low-budget film.
Mm.
We shot up in a big house. I believe it was an old Tom Mix estate, who was a Western cowboy star, up in Silver Lake. There was this humongous mansion up on a hill, had a basement in it. It was really a really neat place to walk around in. It was a bit dilapidated, a big winding staircase that went up into the foyer as you walked in, some big side rooms, and it was a great place to shoot a haunted house movie.
Mm.
So that was our base. We shot there. We shot also in Franklin Canyon, which is over in the middle of Hollywood. You go down into a long winding road and you're at this small lake, and that's where we filmed all of the exterior water scenes in which where Albert Salmi looks down into the water and the witch reaches up out of the water and pulls him down in off of the boat dock. So it was an interesting movie in that all these character actors were in it. Stacy Keach Sr., Albert Salmi, who played the police officer. A guy by the name of Larry Pennell played the father in the movie.
Mm. Was he Clark Gable lookalike?
Yes, and I remembered Larry from when I was a child. I used to watch a TV show called Ripcord. And he was on there as a character along with Ken Curtis, who ended up playing Festus on Gunsmoke.
Mm.
So I recognize all these character actors from my childhood, and it was kind of really an interesting show to work on because I'm doing all these makeups out of kit on these people. I met a stuntman by the name of Bud Davis, who was our witch character. And we didn't have enough money for a whole witch. We had enough money to do arms and hands and a silhouette of a witch.
But very effective.
And our witch in the flashback was Carol. Mm. And that was a really interesting makeup in that it was kind of groundbreaking. Dick Smith had done some makeups on a film, Altered States.
Right, yeah.
And in The Howling, we had done similar effects, but we used air bladders under prosthetics. Mm. Dick and Rick Baker had talked about doing a lot of that stuff, and then it got passed on to Rob Bottin, who really used it to the max on The Howling. So we devised a similar setup when the witch was being burned at the stake, that we would, I don't think it was burned at the stake. I think she was dropped into water.
That's right.
On a post. Yeah. They drowned her. Mm. It's difficult. I haven't seen the film since I don't know where I saw it, but you've probably seen it more times than I have.
I've seen it probably more times than I probably should have. So.
But it'd be fun to see it, see what I left behind.
Yeah.
But the producers kept saying, we want stuff like in The Howling. We want all these effects like in The Howling. So I said, okay, it's time to do air bladders. So I made up all of these air bladders. David Miller worked with me, and together we put on this makeup and devised all these air tubes that ran down the back of her neck. We injected trifluoroethane into the foam latex from underneath, which is basically a rubber cement solvent. It's not that great on the skin, but it makes the skin puff up and swell and distort. So we just pulled out all the stops, and it was groundbreaking at the time for makeup effects to do this kind of stuff. If you saw Altered States, you saw how effective the air bladders under the skin were.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we were the low-budget version of that. We just ran with it, and it was a fun effect. We got it all on film, and as soon as Carol dropped back into the water, came up, she said, "Please get this off, it's burning my skin."
I remember she told me that when I spoke to her, yeah. She also said that she kept the mask that was done of her face, the
life cast.
The life cast. She said it had it on her wall until about a year ago when she threw it away, which is a real shame. But she said she remembered that for a long time, and the burning effect from the makeup kind of stayed with her.
Yeah, but it's like we were all young and new then. I always regret when that happens with an actor or an actress. So that was a real good learning lesson for me, that you really have to think of your victim, so to say, for their well-being.
Yeah, of course.
I remember her. It was basically, if you know the feeling, like if you put acetone on your skin, the evaporation of it, it's very cold.
Yeah.
A similar effect happens with other solvents. But if you trap them next to the skin with no way to escape, you can get what's called a dermatological burn. It's temporary. It's a slight tingling, like say you're pouring alcohol on a cut. That's what it feels like. But we got her out of it as quickly as possible, and she was a real trooper. I really have to give her a pat on the back for taking whatever we could throw at her. But that was one of our big first makeups on the film, which kind of cinched my presence on the show. After that, I did the makeup on Bud Davis as the creature who reaches out and grabs, unsuspecting victims with these long fingernails. And I had made fingertip extensions to go on his hand and done all this buildup on his hands with big gnarly veins and stuff. And some of that stuff was tough to get off at the end of the day. Bud didn't have much hair on his arms after the first few days. And in one shot, we had to see the witch backlit with smoke, and Dave very quickly sculpted a witch head, and I sculpted a witch torso, stomach, which is kind of this big saggy breast with a big fat belly and veins all over it. I don't think you ever see it front lit.
No, I don't think you do, actually. No. I was going to ask, did you? When I spoke to Michael Sable, who was the writer and associate producer of the film, and you alluded to the fact that you were kind of just kids starting out on this, and he said a similar thing, that the producers were constantly asking them to tone it down. And one of the examples he gives was Stacy Keach Senior gets the buzzsaw blade cuts through him.
Yeah.
And he's telling me that how they had a fantastic time throwing blood around and really making it over the top. And he said the producer came back and said, "I knew I couldn't leave you alone." So, were you there for that? And
I was actually not there for that scene. Okay. That was a mechanical effect that was handled by the special effects department. And it was basically, what's called smoke and mirrors shot, where it was a mechanical device that the blade flies off of the saw, bounces, and it's a lot of done with wires and a mechanical effect close up on the face. You don't really see the gimmick, and it's basically splattering blood on Stacy. So he really was in no way of getting harmed.
Of course.
And when I actually saw the film, I go, wow, I didn't even know that was in the movie. So
okay.
When the mirror blows up in the father's face and all the glass flies into his face, that was something where I just put a blood tube off camera, and they wanted a lot of splurting blood. There's another scene where a young lady is trapped by the witch, and her head is impaled to the floor by a big spike.
Which is a very brutal scene, isn't it? I remember that always stayed with me when I saw it as a kid.
Yeah, very brutal scene. And the interesting way we did it was we had a foam latex cast of our girl in a grimace, and we laid her on the floor with a hole in the floor with a small sling to hold her head. So all she did was lean her head back, and we sat this phony head, tucked the neck into her shirt, dressed the hair around where the hole was, and it had a metal bracket that went across the front, the inside of it, with a metal cup into the forehead. So you actually just poke your finger through the forehead, and you could feel where the metal cup was. Well, we had a blood tube to pump blood up into that. So it was a very simple mechanical device that was underneath this foam latex head. So when it held her into position, it was her own body and arms fighting while the creature drove the stake into her forehead. And then we had a small mishap. Some of the blood, which comes spurting out of the head, drained back down underneath and got all over our actress's face. And some of it went up her nose. So
suffering for her art again.
Yeah, suffering for her art. She's choking on a little bit of the Karo syrup blood that we were using.
God. And there's the other sister, the blonde sister, because a little bit of history of for me with the film is I was probably about 12 or 13 when I first saw it on video in the UK, and it was a very, very popular film here in the UK, and it's one of the only films I've ever heard of that came out on video first, and of course video was quite new back then. It was so popular in the UK on video that they actually released it in the cinema after it being on video, not the other way around. So it got released as The Witch on the screens in the UK, because I don't think it actually got a theatrical release in the States until 1985. That's my understanding I've seen, but the reason my friends loved it was actually special effects. I mean, it was a brilliant time. It's the American Way Off in London, The Howling, and it was always to see what the special effects would be like next. And one of the scenes, I think it was with the other sister, who you don't really see getting killed, but I actually saw some Mexican lobby cards which I bought off eBay a while back, and I have to send you some JPEGs of those. One of them, I was going to say, one of them showed the blonde girl lying in the wagon with all her entrails thrown all over the place, which didn't actually make the final movie. I think most of the special effects are in there, but obviously some things did hit the cutting room floor, which must always be kind of the bane of the life of a special effects man, mustn't it? All your hard work sometimes vanishes.
Yeah, it does. And the way that film was set up is they had someone else doing the regular makeup and all the actors on the set. And, you know, if it was a little blood here and there, like say in the case of the Stacy Keach, whoever was doing on set, and I really can't remember the on-set makeup person, they would handle those little cuts and scratches and a fleck of blood kind of things. And as the special effects makeup artist, I would come in basically with the heavy artillery. I had the blood pumps and all that gear. And so there are scenes that actually, if you see the movie, I wasn't there, and I probably wasn't even aware they were shot at the time. I didn't have a working script. I had pages of the scene that was being shot. Jim, the director, was also from Oklahoma, so we had a little bit of a kinship there. I've actually seen him one time since then, and he was a cameraman on a TV series over at Paramount, and it was years ago. Just lost touch. But yeah, so quite often those, like you mentioned, like the entrails and stuff, that'll be dressed by the prop person.
Right. Yeah, of course.
So they simply cover the girl with blood and throw some entrails on her, and that's that. You know, we had and it was really, it's amazing what they can cram into a movie and what you can pull out of your hat on a moment's notice.
Yeah.
And that has been part of my life in film ever since. You know, on Lost, it was the same kind of a thing. Thank goodness for the experience of films like this that made me think on my feet. Thank goodness for the experience of being in the circus where you're traveling around, working with all kinds of people, language barriers, personality barriers, how to make props with what is at hand at the local hardware store. Those types of groundwork as a special effects makeup artist have been invaluable to me.
Of course.
And I came in at a time when low budget horror films were the rage. Working with Tom Berman in his studio on several low budget films, which led into bigger budget films. Being exposed to films, thankful to Rick and Rob, like The Howling. And then I went on to work with V. Neal. We became friends, and V and I worked together on several shows, starting with low budgets, working up into Lost Boys, and then on to Beetlejuice. And it was a steady climb, but it was great formula for a creative artist to be around those types of films at the time.
Of course. I don't want to take too much more of your time, Steve. I mean, sure. I'm sure our listeners are going to find this absolutely fascinating. I was going to ask you actually about how things are different now. You've covered a little bit of it in the early 1980s to what's happening now. I just John, back on Superstition. I just wanted you. Would it be right to think it was filmed kind of early mid 1981?
Yes, I was married in 1981. My daughter was born in 82.
Right.
So literally, the time we are right now, 30 years ago, we were filming it.
Wow. Well, that's a perfect time to do a retrospective of the film, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
So that's great. And just to wrap things up, Steve, because thank you ever so much for giving your time. It's just to say, I mean, if you look back at, say, something like Superstition, you've covered a little bit about this, but now, I mean, when you look at your CV, I mean, the films you worked on are amazing, and you're working on massive blockbusters now, which must have, I mean, many, you know, in some cases, you know, tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars budget.
Right.
How's it, you know, how does it compare, you know, with CGI and the difference between working with latex? I mean, how, you know, do you still obviously still love your job, but how do you feel things are different now?
Well, you know, you have to think differently. You have to think that, okay, I need to put a bullet hole in this guy's head and I'm going to have a tube, and the director, oh, no, we're going to CGI that. You don't need to. All you need is After Effect. We will do that for you. And it's kind of nice that they can do that, but it's also kind of sad in that the practical effects are kind of being put to the wayside and being taken over by some CGI. I was just recently at an event 2 weeks ago called Monster Palooza in Hollywood here, and they had a whole retrospective on The Howling, actually.
Okay, excellent.
And all of the fans there were big fans of old school special makeup effects. Yeah. The lack of CGI. Now, I realize there is a great marriage between the two.
Yeah.
But in these days where there's a behind-the-scenes movie of how they did everything in the world, it kind of takes the magic away.
Of course, it's smoke and mirrors, isn't it? It's make-believe and create magic. Because I agree. I mean, this is one of the things that you know, when I was growing up, I loved the whole special effects. And of course, back in the early 80s with people like Tom Savini and Rob and the people you've spoken about, I mean, there was that kind of, back in the early 80s, there was almost like a time when makeup effects men were like rock stars, weren't there? There was a real cult of personality around many makeup effects, and people were looking forward to, say, the next Friday the 13th or the next kind of big horror movie, because they want to see what would happen, what would top the next one. And of course, unfortunately in the UK, and I think in the States to some degree, that censorship after 81, 82 really kind of came into the fore and actually made a lot of the stuff that you guys were doing was actually ending up on the cutting room floor and never being seen, which is obviously, you know, a real tragedy. But yeah, certainly a lot of the people, and I know the other guys did a podcast with, you know, big fans of the big fans of the practical effects, and CGI is getting to a place now, and it's quite seamless. But unfortunately, sometimes you can spot the CGI over the practical effects, and certainly looking back at what you did on Superstition with Carol Goldman, the makeup effects, I mean, that was really creepy stuff. And, you know, I remember as a kid thinking, how amazing was that? And so, you know, from a complete geek out, it was going to say, you know, thank you from the bottom of my heart, Steve, for coming on this today. And, you know, thank you for providing, you know, with nightmares as my 12-year-old self back in the early 80s, which is fantastic. So is there anything else you want to say, Steve? What are you up to at the moment? Or
Well, I think that as much as low-budget horror films were a part of that genre, I think they are making a comeback. I think with the advent of all the zombie movies,
of course,
a lot of, and they're getting better budgets, but I think a lot of the practical effects and the practical use of makeups are being reappreciated by the fans. I feel sorry for some makeup people who are naive about what it takes to do some of the magic tricks we used to do, and they're in a learning curve right now. Yeah. I hope people like myself are continually employed because we have been there, we've lived through it. We know the little magic tricks and the shortcuts to do stuff without the extravagant expenses spent on CGI. And there are a lot of low-budget films being made out there. I've worked with a lot of artists back in Boston. There's an artist back there who wrote, produced, directed, and wrote and acted in and did all the makeup effects in his own short film.
Yeah, which is,
so those things are out there.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you look at a film like Insidious, which is just out in the UK very shortly, and that was something it was $1.5 million to produce, but it's made something like $45 million at the American box office. So I can't remember if it might have been Roger Corman who said to people who want to break into the film business, the best thing to do is get a camera, some good-looking teenagers, take them to a deserted house and kill them off creatively one by one, and that's the formula for getting into the film business. And I can't see that ever stopping anytime soon. It's the perfect in. And I think there's always going to be people watching films like these. I'm sure there'll always be fans. And again, just want to say, Steve, thank you ever so much for taking time out to talk to us today. We'll be doing this retrospective in a couple of weeks' time, and I'll send you a link.
Great. I'd love to send me a link to your website. I'd love to check out what you do, and we'll talk again.
Just a dream. It's a bad dream.
But it was so real. I saw the hand in the water. It was calling me.
You know you're going to be all right now.
I thought I was awake, and then the spikes came through the ceiling.
Okay, and that was Steve Laporte, who, thank you ever so much again to Steve for, taking his time to speak to us. He actually also said he was going to send over some images from the unused makeup for The Witch and Superstition, because he said something like, bizarrely about her having a huge pot belly, which you don't see in the film. But he said that there's some images that he's going to send over to me soon when he gets finished working on Pirates of the Caribbean movie, which is mind-boggling that he went from Superstition to that, but that's how it was. Just some information about Superstition. Just a couple of things that sort of struck me again about the film was, of course, the character of Mary, who was the little blonde girl in the film, who kind of turns out probably, although it's not actually made that clear whether or not she is actually the witch anyway, but it's kind of very much a nod again.
I'm glad you said that, because I was actually about to ask you, what did you think she was the witch or what? Because I was kind of unclear on that.
I think so, because at the end, and obviously we are in spoiler territory, and we've already said we are, is she says when he throws the big cross into the lake, which incidentally was the same cross that was used in the film The Evil. There's one little tidbit there, but he throws it in, and he says, "Oh, don't worry, the witch is dead." And she says she would have been if she'd been home. So I kind of got the impression that meant that she herself was the witch, or an incarnation of the witch, and she was saying to him, "I wasn't home." But then of course he stabs her, and then she falls into the lake. But then we can't, slasher movies, of course. Look at the Friday the 13th series. There's no point dissecting them too much, I can guess. But that was my take on it. I mean, how about you guys? What did you think?
Yeah, I assumed she was the witch as well. I mean, because he stabs her at the end, and I just assume that she's the sort of the reincarnation, if you like, or the ghostly embodiment of the witch from the lake.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. I knew that she was the witch, but I wasn't certain if she was the witch through the whole thing when she was like talking to little Billy Jacoby through the whole film, or showing up. I didn't know if she was the witch then, or if the witch inhabited this little girl. I was kind of unclear.
I got the impression, because he's sort of saying about Final Destination, but when the buzzsaw scene, when Stacy Keach Sr., who was actually the father of Stacy Keach, as you might imagine from the name, she skips across the floor, doesn't she, before that happens? So she kind of makes it happen somehow by however.
I didn't notice that. I didn't.
Yeah, she kind of skips across in front of because she talks to the priest for the first time when he's cleaning the paint off, and then she skips across the floor, and then he's saying to everyone, "Stop! We got to." And then as they're stopping, that's when the buzzsaw flies off and goes into the priest's chest. So, that's the impression I got. Also, I thought it was very much a nod to something like Kill Baby Kill, the Mario Bava film. And also, incidentally, actually, the Perfume of the Lady in Black has a little girl in white as well. It seems to be quite a staple of a kind of, like, I kind of guess it's the kind of the archetype of purity and innocence, isn't it? Is a blonde-haired girl in white frilly dress, and so turning that around and making her potentially the evil one, I think it's just kind of turning conventions on their head. But I was going to say just a couple of things. The two girls I really liked, especially the Cheryl, who's the bitchy one, the surly one. I did a little bit of research on her, and obviously, again, as we said, we always try and get hold of people, see if we could interview them. I couldn't find her. She has a strange name, Melo McCaslin. Couldn't find her anywhere, but she went onto the giddy heights of Santa Barbara. Now, I don't know if any of you saw Santa Barbara, the daytime soap, but it actually played in the UK for a while. And it was quite a joy to behold. It was quite trashy.
That was a staple in my household when I was young. Santa Barbara was on television all the time.
I loved the episode when they have the big earthquake. It might have been the very last episode. And they have the same people walking past the camera, then picking up a different colour surfboard and walking back past the other way. And then it's the same people just walking past, carrying different things like pot plants and stuff like that. And then they have huge polystyrene blocks which they did the earthquake scene on, bouncing off people's heads. It's pure class. But she was in that. I'm not sure what character, but also sadly she was in something called Broken Famous, playing herself, a documentary, which means obviously things probably didn't work out the way she may have wanted them to, I kind of guess, in Tinseltown. The other, the blonde-haired girl was slightly more famous, I think, in the States. Anyway, Heidi Bohé, or Boha, or whatever, however you pronounce her name. Apparently she was in Hotel. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but she was in that, and apparently she did a thing. Of course, Billy Jane, who was in Bloody Birthday, we talked about last time, he was in this. He played my namesake Justin, and he was in it before he gets, well, killed by the witch. He was also obviously in X-Ray, and it's a shame, as I think we said before, we did try and speak to him, and he did originally, say that he was interested in answering the questions, so we didn't hear back from him. But then people are busy, and we understand that, but that's how things go. But when I spoke to Michael Sabjal, he said that they were very much fans of Suspiria, and I think you can see that in the film, that it's kind of it's taken a nod towards that. Just a few more bits about the film. It's funny that you guys are saying that you really like the first 10 minutes because, ironically, the first 10 minutes of the film are actually a separate movie. They were filmed before the rest of the film was made as a way of drumming up interest in financing the rest of the film. And what Michael O. Sabjal told me was that they sold it to producers who then rewrote their script and made it a lot less thrilling as far as that he was concerned. And he said, and this is really bizarre, he tells a really funny story, and he tells it better than I can on the website. But he said that when they were filming the circular saw scene, he said that the producers were constantly trying to get them to tone down the violence. Why, I don't know. But he said when they were away, and I think I mentioned this in the Steve Laporte interview, but when they're away, what they did was they just chucked loads of blood at it, made it really, really bloody, and then the producer came back and said, I can't leave you alone for a minute. So I'm probably just repeating myself, actually. I remember talking to Steve Laporte about that. But it's interesting, the film was actually a 10-minute short, which was used, which is why there's a slightly different, so much packed into the first 10 minutes. So I think what else there. Michael Sabjal thought it was going to be a franchise. He thought it was going to be the next Friday the 13th or Halloween. But obviously what happened was the film was shot in April 1981. And when I went back through Variety, I was having a look through there, and it seems that it got caught up in some kind of legal wrangles, which may explain why the film didn't get a release actually in the United States until 1985. And Michael says that it actually did pretty well in urban areas in the eastern United States, but didn't play any further west than Mississippi. So the film didn't do that well. But of course, it was 4 years old by that point. It was released unrated at the cinema, one of the last few films to be released unrated in the States. I think it got released in Spain in 1982, I think, and then came out on video in 83. And I think I mentioned in the Steve Laporte interview, it was one of the very few films that was so popular on video in the United Kingdom. It actually got a subsequent cinema release, and I remember seeing the quad poster for The Witch up at our local Odeon. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Is there anything else, guys, you wanted to say about the film?
I wanted to say that one thing I forgot to mention is that the actual witch, the image you see coming through the door with the hood at the very end, it's all backlit. I'm actually kind of glad that we didn't really get a good look at the witch, because I've always thought that witches looked a little more silly than scary. So I think by keeping the actual face kind of hidden, it kind of lets you use your imagination as to what she looks like under there. And I don't think showing her in full would have helped the film. I think, keeping her backlit and just a specter coming towards the screen, I thought that kind of elevated the tension level a little. That makes any sense.
I think they did really well. The only thing that made me laugh, because is that we used to have a cat called George Glass, a black cat. And
I remember George Glass. And he had like very long claws, and he had one bit of tuft on one of his paws that was longer than the other. And we used to see him. He used to claw his way, a door open, so you see his paw coming around the door and pulling it. So I can never take Superstition that seriously, because, especially after having George Glass, because every time I saw that claw coming towards people, I always thought it looked a bit like George Glass. But of course, that's just me. But no, I agree. Sorry, I don't remember a George Glass at our school.
Sorry,
I just had to throw that out. I don't remember a George Glass at our school. Come on, you're the Brady Bunch guy. You should know that.
Yes. No, I know. Sorry, I do apologise. I was on a different level, not higher level, obviously. But how about anything else, guys?
As you said, you couldn't take the film seriously, and I can't take it seriously, because throughout the course of the film, no matter how many misfortunate events happen to these people, they still don't twig that maybe they should leave the house. I mean, how many people have to be decapitated or killed with circular saws before they twig, maybe we should leave? I mean, even when dragging their daughter out of the lake and she's got a severed arm attached to her leg, they still don't.
Well, that just happens every now.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not one of those again.
And a lot of deaths happen before they even move in. Don't they hear a story that the family was like hacked up?
Yeah. So they got the one guy who kind of gets his neck stuck in the wiring of that. I think it's a dumbwaiter or an elevator or something. And I guess they don't really know that happened, but these people keep dying towards the middle of the film, and they're just like, well, let's investigate. Let's get down to the root of all this religious mumbo jumbo. And I'm sitting there thinking, fuck that, I'm getting the hell out of here. Fuck this house.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it's funny that with this, it's kind of was it Hans Manship where you interviewed Joseph, and was it him who played the kind of silent kind of guy with learning difficulties in House of Death?
Yeah, he played Casey in House of Death. Brain damaged.
Yeah, because there was a similar character in this, wasn't there? Who was running around looking sort of like a mime.
Oh, I forgot that scene. Yeah, he's basically running around. He's beating the crap out of everybody, and the cops are shooting at him, and he just keeps running. And I forgot that scene. Yeah,
he looks like the lead singer of Keane.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I thought that was the thing that I thought was really funny when they're going, and it's a secret hiding place that's been there since the 1600s or whatever, and it's kind of like all our family go there to protect the witch, blah blah blah, and then when you actually see it, it's like someone's garage in Los Angeles, isn't it? So it doesn't look very like an ancient hiding place by any standards, but
it's like a bed set. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I also like the scene where the lead guy is talking to the old woman about the history, and she's like, it started in 1692, and he's like, well, I don't think we have records that go back that far, and she's like, check the library archive.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I mean, that's what I love. I mean, I do. If you've not seen Superstition, it's a film that it's a lot of fun. You should see it at least once. It's not going to win any prizes for anything at all, but it is a lot of fun. It's one of my favourites, and I think, it's you guys sort of saying that if you'd seen it when being my age or whatever, you might have enjoyed it, hold it in slightly higher regard. And I've got that nostalgia wrapped up, but I do really enjoy the film. And one thing actually I just remembered was that I don't believe an uncut version's ever really been released, even though it's a very gory film. There's on the interview with Michael on Hysteria Lives, I bought some, I think they were Mexican or Spanish lobby cards for Superstition, and and it was released over there. I think it's the House of Mary or something, or Casa del Mary, or wherever it was. But the Haida Bohe's character, when the priest goes down and opens up the car or the wagon, and she's lying there. There's actually a shot when she's been disemboweled and all her guts are all hanging all over the place. That's not in the final film. They may have cut it out, but that was certainly filmed, or at least was meant to be included. And interestingly, on the BBFC website, which is the British Censor's website, they list the film being resubmitted in an edited form. Now I've actually got The Witch. I can see I've got the video for The Witch, and I've got the video for Superstition. They look identical to me, but there may be some slight differences. So there's half decent releases. I think there's a Region 1 release of this and a Region 2 release. So I think they're both still in print. And actually, just as an aside, talking about DVDs. There's just, if you haven't heard the news, there's been news talking about Slaughter High and Funhouse earlier, but there's lots of new slasher movies or old slasher movies coming out on DVD, including finally Humongous. And it's a film I'm sure we're going to cover at some point, and it's a film that I kind of have a love-hate relationship with, but it's always been criticised for being far too dark. And I put a trailer on my Facebook, or the Hysteria Lives Facebook page, which showed that was much lighter, and so hopefully they will do a better version of that, and we'll finally get to see the film as it's meant to be seen. And I got in contact with is it Scorpion releasing, but I've got some Humongous memorabilia which I've sort of said that I could scan and send to them, and they got back to me and said they'd be interested in that. So hopefully they'll be putting out some pretty good releases on that. And so on that bombshell, is there anything else we want to talk about Superstition before we wrap things up, guys?
I'm scared to do it. Get it? Ha 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 ha.
Eh?
Superstition. Scared.
Right.